Okay, so our community is moving toward the end of our winter retreat. There's another week left, or not quite a week. And last night was the lunar observance night, and Ajahn Pasanno gave a talk, a reflection, and one of the things that he mentioned was there've been sort of over this past 3 months, there have been many teachings given on many different aspects of practice and Dhamma. And that is, that's hopefully useful, but it's also and sometimes there can be too much. It's like Ajahn Buddhadasa called the Abhidhamma. He said, Abhi means, it's just like there's the Dhamma and then there's the Abhidhamma. It's sort of the Dhamma and too much Dhamma, sort of. The Buddha, of course, there's a very famous discourse where the Buddha was in a forest and picked up a handful of leaves and asked the monks that were with him, which are more, the leaves in his hand or the leaves in the whole forest. And of course they answered, oh, well, there's many more leaves in the forest than there are in your hand. And the Buddha said, yes, it's true. It's similar. What I've taught is like the handful of leaves, and what I've known and understood and seen is like all the leaves in the forest. But then even when what he's taught seems like a lot, and of course in that particular discourse he said, what I've taught or emphasized is these Four Noble Truths. But there are teachings where where the Buddha sort of distills it down even further to make it more concise, more pithy, and one of those teachings is just a short phrase that in the Pali, Sambe Dhamma Nalanga Binivesaya, which has, say, all phenomena are not worthy of attachment, or nothing whatsoever should be clung to, or nothing is to be adhered to. So this aspect of non-clinging and attachment, freeing the heart from attachment, relinquishing attachment, is very central to the Buddha's teaching, and if we and the practice, so that all the, as I said, particularly as we come to toward the end of this retreat, then to be able to reflect on how can we just keep this clear and simple and straightforward, and not get too overwhelmed by the even the immensity of that handful of leaves that the Buddha taught, and to be able to have something that helps to keep one on on task, on point, and that teaching that the Buddha gives is, it's interesting that one of the places where it comes is where in the discourse where Mahamoggallana he's still an unenlightened practitioner. He's had the experience of stream entry, and he's meditating, practicing, and but he's nodding, he's falling asleep while he's meditating, and the Buddha goes to him and said, are you nodding? Are you dozing? And because Moggallana is saying, yeah. and the Buddha gives him instructions on how to deal with sleepiness in meditation. So it's actually a teaching that most Buddhist meditators have come across and heard, even if you haven't read the discourse itself, because it's very common, say, instruction and guidance for how to keep the mind from getting overwhelmed by sloth and torpor during meditation. But in the discourse, after the Buddha finishes giving instructions on say, meditation and dealing with the hindrance of sloth and torpor, he goes on to give teachings on encouraging Mahamoggallana in his conduct in regards to lay people, in terms of not engaging, becoming too overly friendly or too overly dependent on the on the goodwill or the generosity of the lay community, or becoming too tied into the contact, the socializing and this social friendliness, and being able to maintain the integrity of being a samana, being a religious seeker, and there's a few different aspects of just that living the holy life and living it skillfully within the world that the Buddha gives, and then Mahamoggallana asks the Buddha for a teaching in brief that would lead to the cessation of suffering, the overcoming of dukkha, freedom from freedom from dukkha, and lead to the consummation of the holy life. And excuse me. And that's where the Buddha then gives this short discourse on saying that, say, when a bhikkhu practitioner has heard that nothing is to be clung to, Sabbhe Dhamma Nalanga Binivesai. Say all Dhamma is all things, all phenomena, or nothing whatsoever is to be clung to, and so when one hears, say that teaching, that nothing whatsoever is to be clung to, then one has heard all things. When one has heard all things, one understands all things. When one understands all things, one experiences pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, contemplating impermanence, contemplating dispassion, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. When one contemplates in that way, all clinging is relinquished, all clinging is overcome. And when one clings to nothing, then one is peaceful, or is able to experience this quality of true peace and come to a place of stopping, of ceasing. And when one is dispassionate, one's peaceful, one is unagitated, one experiences nibbana. And so that it's a very direct teaching that we can be carrying with us and reflecting on. And that aspect of just that sense of nothing whatsoever is to be clung to is it isn't that one doesn't engage, the Buddha is saying, but when one is looking in that way, investigating in that way, understanding things in that way, then one engages from a place of experiencing. And so the Buddha picks up feeling, because every mental state has a feeling associated with it, whether it's pleasant, painful, or say neither painful or pleasant, or neutral. So that each, and that's how the Buddha outlines it, one having understood all things, one experiences the feelings, contemplating impermanence, contemplating dispassion, contemplating cessation, contemplating relinquishment. And so that there's it isn't that, nothing's to be clung to, and then it just sort of, I don't do anything, or just zone out, and I'll be able to experience nibbana. One engages with the present moment, and each moment from a place of contemplation, investigation, and that perspective of. And of course, those are the same sets of say, contemplations, investigations, understandings that are. That's what's in the the Anapanasati Sutta, in the last section of the Anapanasati Sutta. So with each breathing in and in-breath, one contemplates impermanence, one breathing and out-breath, one contemplates, one breathing in and in-breath, one contemplates dispassion. So there's that turning of attention in that way, that contemplation or attending to experience. Because it isn't if you're sitting around thinking about it, but it's receiving it, experiencing it in that way. And when I said that, when one's not clinging, and to know that one says, nothing whatsoever is to be clung to. The word is upadana, and there's there's a kind of an opposite or an antonym to that, a similar word, but with an opposite meaning, a samadhana, and it's like picking up or practicing with, like in the Thai language they use it. They just change it to of course, as in many of the words in the Thai language, where a Pali or Sanskrit word is in sort of shortened and used as a, so that samathan, like when you pick up the precepts, or you determine to take on the precepts, or determine to take on a particular practice. So like samathan seen is that the opposite use of it's the same. It's a holding, or maybe attaching to or clinging, but it's a skillful use. Ajahn Chah gives an illustration in the sense of because there's like appropriate holding on to and inappropriate holding on to. So he said, like if you go into a dark room or a dark forest, then it's appropriate to hold on to your flashlight and turn it on too, so that you can see where you're going, and so that you hold on. You don't sort of relinquish all clinging to your attachment and then stumble around the forest in the dark. You hold on to it. You use it. You're making use of something skillfully. So that similarly, the one is doing the same thing with our practices of the in our Dhamma practice, where it's not that we're not making a determination to put things into practice. The precepts or meditation objects, our contemplations and investigations, our cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. These are things that we pick up and we train with, we practice with. We hold on to because it's appropriate at that time, but we're not making it an object of clinging or upadana. So that it's like when the Buddha speaks of the different kinds of attachment, of upadana, or clinging, then he gives 4 different focuses of clinging. So clinging to sense pleasure, so that clinging to objects of the senses, that one is trying to gain pleasure, gain gratification, seek one's happiness in, and rely on, depend on that to get out of any kind of discomfort, dis-ease. One just goes straight to sense pleasure, just to not have to experience something unpleasant or uncomfortable, and that's when one's clinging to it, then it's that sense of that is almost like taking that as one's refuge. And of course, that's a very flimsy refuge. It's a very flimsy basis for one's long-term welfare and happiness. So that it doesn't mean that you can't experience pleasure, but it's you can't be clinging to it. You can't be attaching to it as a viable means for freedom from suffering. Pleasure is pleasurable, but it arises and ceases, and it's kind of ephemeral, and it's a hit and miss affair. So there's not much point in putting all your all your chips on that jackpot. I mean, it's not gonna come to much fruition. Clinging to sila batu badanas. It's a clinging to practice and precept, and again we say, "Oh, I'm just renouncing all my clinging, so I'm not going to take any precepts. I'm not going to do any practice." Well, that doesn't work. But it's more like the assumption that if I just got the right practice, kept the right precepts, did it in the right way, right formula, get it all ritualized, then it would purify me, and that is. I mean, sometimes it's actually translated as say attachment to rite and ritual. It's because there is a certain ritualized assumption of some kind of purification or gain through either ceremony or formulaic application of practice principles, and of course that the Buddha is saying you have to use wisdom and discernment. It has to have this foundation in a middle way, and it has to be really, one has to be understanding how it's functioning and working, so that one has to relinquish that kind of assumption, and one has to develop wisdom and discernment. The dit upadana is attachment or clinging to views, opinions. Of course, classically, in the Buddha's time, there's these list of the different types of views, and there's many lists actually of the views, all the way up to like 62 different views of philosophical views of the world and the universe. And at the time of the Buddha, it can get very complicated of having a particular view, and but the underlying focus of attachment is what is, this is right, this is true, and everything else is wrong. So that that sense of attaching and clinging to a particular viewpoint, stance, having an opinion, which doesn't mean that one doesn't have any kind of perspective, but it's more just understanding the conditioned nature of views, and that one can't make that as a foundation of purity. Just even saying that, just holding a view that the Buddha was absolutely right and correct, and you argue with everybody in the world about it. It doesn't free the heart. So it's an understanding of that tendency to want to establish oneself in some kind of view that one can hold as this is true, this is correct, this is right, without understanding one's own heart, one's own mind, and that dependent and conditional nature of views. The last aspect of clinging or attachment that the Buddha points to is attavarupadana, and it's attachment or clinging to the doctrine of self or the assumption of self, and it's important in the sense of the Buddha doesn't say like attachment to self. Like you have to get rid of all attachment to self. And just have no self, which is because the Buddha said, well, there wasn't a self to begin with. It's a belief, it's a doctrine, it's an assumption, and to be able to see through that sense of creating an I position, a me position, a mind position, is a something that we assume into existence. You don't have to go around trying to annihilate self because it didn't exist in the first place. And we attach to that. Or we attach to the position that there's no self. And that's it's really it might sound a bit pedantic, but it's important to recognize that the Buddha just didn't take a position on this because that is so human, and it's such a source of suffering. And of course, the whole point of say freedom from clinging is a cessation of suffering, an overcoming of suffering, and a consummation of this holy life, so that looking and investigating these focuses that the mind tends to take, focal points that the mind tends to take, and and to cling to, attach to, and to be able to to not buy into that. And of course the way to do that is just how the Buddha points out, through experiencing whatever one experiences. Then one experiences it through the lens of impermanence, seeing its uncertain, its changing nature, its inconstant reality. It's through the dispassion, that sense of cooling and allowing to fade away the kind of a desire, that habit of wanting to hold onto. It's like Ajahn Chah. Remember him so often saying, we hold, but you don't hold tightly. So you hold things in order to pick them up and see it clear. It's like you hold this cloth. You hold it and you are able to look at it, and you start holding up all of our experience, both of the world externally as well as internally, and we hold it, lift it up and look at it, but you don't hold tightly to it. And you see its inconstant nature, its tendency to not satisfy desire. So it's more, it's so satisfying to allow dispassion to settle into the heart. Not in the sense of not feeling it, but a soothing and fading away of just all the frenzy and complication that we invest in the world or in our own sense of self and sense of me. The viewing things and experiencing through the lens of cessation. In the sense of recognize that when ceasing, usually what happens, when something ceases, we keep trying to either replicate or to get something new, and we miss the opportunity to experience the kind of spaciousness that we can step into when we allow cessation to manifest. And because there's kind of it's kind of like a doorway into emptiness or into spaciousness, and it's almost like when we are really attentive and willing to allow that cessation to become clear, it's like a doorway into that aspect of emptiness, and usually how we think of either cessation, it's like an ending, but it's not, or even emptiness, as if it's emptiness. But if from a Buddhist perspective, from a place of freedom and freedom from suffering, it's sort of like it's almost like the firm ground of emptiness that we can be grounded in, and that's where that's where our refuge is, as opposed to that constant trying to find something that's going to be solid, something that's going to be to our liking, something that's going to fit into our ideas of what we think or what we want or how it should be, how the world should be, how I should be. It's hopeless. it's never been that way. And then the last aspect of experiencing through that lens of relinquishment. And again, there's sort of that sense of, mean I have to give up something? It's sort of, but that's where our freedom is when we can relinquish and not hold on and not be, like we spend so much time just desperately trying to hold on. As I was walking over here, I was kind of, because these thoughts have been percolating, and I had this kind of the memory of what was it that I think it was Charlton Heston, and he was when he was a spokesperson for the NRA, and it was sort of this, this holding on to his until they had to take away from his gun from his cold dead hands, and that's we do. And that's what we do with everything. It's just like, I'm going to cling, I'm going to hold on to what I think is right, what I think is pleasurable, what I think is comfortable, what I think is safe, and it's just, and you're just, just prying our cold dead hands off things, and that's how we live our life. So the relinquishment and just being, that's tremendous opportunity to move into spaciousness and clarity, because we're willing to relinquish, and particularly the relinquishment around the sense of self, the sense of I and me and mine, the freedom that comes from not having to carry around an agenda of me. What about me? It's just this me. Me is so this forlorn cry of pathetic. It's so. We should be so ready to relinquish that, and to experience the peace of this freedom from suffering, freedom from the complication. So that the Buddha did give a very simple teaching to distill. The Buddha gave a lot of teachings, and you see the Tripitaka, and it's like it's lots of books, discourses, but it can be distilled down into that. Nothing whatsoever should be clung to, and so that picking that up as a theme and delighting in it, because it's a doorway into freedom that we don't have to complicate things with. So I'll offer that for reflection today.